Mr. LaRouche, I'd like to ask you a couple, one or two questions on the same subject, which is how we take the national and international Glass-Steagall mobilization to a higher level, such that it can be the thing that brings sovereignty back to the United States. We have two key flanks on this that we've been doing the last few weeks, which is people can look on the website. This week it's been updated, all of the international calls from key parliamentarians in Spain and in Italy and in Germany and so forth, calling on the U.S. Congress to move on Glass-Steagall. And these were delivered last week. This week we're looking at the start of the week we had 18 resolutions introduced in the state legislatures. Three other states where letters are coming from the state legislators to the federal Congress. Now we have this week a bill introduced by 3 Democrats in Illinois, Obama's home state, and Delaware, by roughly 50% of the Senate. And then, of course, as we open this webcast tonight, the news about the U.S. Senate. But in light of where we're headed with this bail-in and the fact that this is accelerating so fast, as you're saying, and people in the Congress, there was a couple of hearings this week, largely seem to be oblivious of the fact that this is going on, with the British Bankers Association coming out on May 14th saying, the executive of it saying, we need the bail-in, the powerful tools, it's been shown. And the EU finance ministers meeting in Brussels on the same day, not debating whether or not the Cyprus template is going to be the model for Europe, but basically debating the details, that this is what's going to happen. And we have, meanwhile, people like Peter Schiff, the CEO of Europe Pacific Capital, this week being interviewed saying, a record-breaking stock market is distorting a frightening reality. The U.S. is being eaten alive by a horrific cancer that will ultimately destroy the economy and impoverish the vast majority of its citizens. And he warns of this collapse of the dollar after this fake bubble blows out. We're already seeing this kind of death in Europe. Reports came out of the hospital system in Portugal and Spain, and there was an investigation by Dr. Jose Manuel Silva, Portuguese Medical Association this week, showing that there are no doctors assigned to the hospital's emergency ambulance service for 40 to 50% of the time when he investigated Portugal's national system. He says this is now putting us on where you're going to be, where people are in life-threatening situation, they're going to be dying all over the place. And the massive austerity cuts, there was a study done showing what the effect is already here in the U.S. of the sequester. That's now coming out in this big report on austerity. So I wanted to just ask you, and there's a lot more you could go through of the collapse in Europe, the fact that this is happening here, that it's happening here, that it's happening now, and that, you know, as we've detailed the youth unemployment figures increasing by an order of magnitude since 2008, that it's happening now, and yet with the threat of the bail-in looming, what is lacking in our leadership? And so I just want to get to the question, which is, you have what we get from a lot of the state legislators that we're working with. Some of them say, you know, I feel like I'm not really a representative of the people because I am actually just implementing a budget and cutting a budget that I'm being given. I'm not in control at all. I'm not representing the interests of the people, so I'm no longer a representative. And so some of these people want to break out of that, and really, therefore, what is this Glass-Steagall fight really mean? And this week you put out a paper on the Glass-Steagall principle. And so as we're catalyzing this force, or these state legislators, really what does this mean for them? And how can it be the flank that takes back the country?
Well, you've had some experience of late, in the past couple of years and so, of this sort of thing. What you do, you come into a bunch of people and you say, well, to yourself, well, these people are not stupid. Why are they behaving stupidly? And just your remark just now relate to that. You have people in the Congress, for example, who are not stupid persons, but they're doing stupid things. And they say, what is this that forces me to do these stupid things rather than the things I think should be done? And that's where the problem lies. So what you've got two problems we have now. First of all, since the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the moral level, moral quality, and intelligence of the American population has been in a steady or even accelerated decline. That's what the problem is. We have the human species of the United States, for example, as it existed in, say, 1964, 1966, is no longer. Look at the children out there. Look at the condition of these children who are barely human, or maybe not even human. And this number is increasing as the generations are added to the list. So we're dealing with that kind of now we have to go to make a more profound assessment. And the assessment has two qualities. One, it's the obvious, what the level of intelligence is that's being expressed by our population. What's their orientation? Like the green policy. The green policy is clinical insanity. It's actually cultural suicide, and worse. Because the green policy means that the death rate will increase, the population will shrink, all kinds of horrors will occur with each new generation of children reaching adolescence. You find the general trend has been recently, each generation is worse than the one before. And that's what the problem is. So the solution lies largely in understanding what we have to do to inspire our own people and those of other nations to stop being more and more stupid generation by generation. The kinds of work they could do if they were offered work is poorer with each generation. It's worse all the time. So we've got to reverse the reversal. And that's where we have to locate this problem and its solution. Now, you have to go to permit me to be a little more profound on this. The question is the productivity of the human species. And people don't understand the human species. Even people don't understand the human species. The human species is unlike any other form of animal life. It is intrinsically noetic. Now you can take a member of a species, an animal species, and you can train them, use them, so forth, all these kinds of things. You can change the way they are treated. You can change the way you select them, these kinds of things. But the animal life of animals don't progress. Biologically, they remain pretty much the same, including intellectually. You can enhance that or make it worse. What's not understood is the fact that the human species is unique. It is not an animal species. That is, the human species evolves upward, systemically. For example, scientific discoveries of scientific principle, revolutions. I'm fighting now to get a different idea of what the solar system represents. And therefore our evolution as human beings is what defines us. And when we try to solve the problem of the failures that we experience among our fellow human beings, we don't look to the fact that there is a certain track of development, of noetic development of the human mind, which does not occur in the animal species. And our great problem now, which the environmentalist movement typifies, the environmental movement is a degenerating population. They are worse as a generation from each generation to other. It's backward evolution. And so therefore the problem we have to, if we want to be serious about this, we have to understand that this factor of the development of higher forms of intellectual achievement, profound essential achievement, are the necessary way in which the human species can exist. We see this when we start to look at the question of the occupation of the solar space. You see immediately that when you try to think in terms of ordinary human terms, in terms of what's going on in the solar system, you find that you come up with ideas which are absolutely absurd. You use symbols. Your idea of vision, all these things are different, and they don't work most of the time. But mankind's job is to progress so that mankind becomes transformed into a higher species, as if organically, from generation to generation. And unless we can have that kind of progress, where each generation is actually a higher species in terms of its development, its intellectual and related development, unless we can do that, you're going to have the kind of thing that Europe and Asia have experienced so much for so long, again and again and again. Mankind is like an animal which evolves to a higher species over the course of successive generations, as no animal species can do. And that's what the issue is. If you can't touch that thing, if you can't deal with that problem, with that challenge, sooner or later, mankind fails. As whole cultures have failed in just that way. That's the history of the barbarism in human civilization. People become more stupid by the successive generation, not more effective. And our struggle, if we're going to win, our struggle is to put our finger on that issue. We must introduce true evolutionary creativity. We must change the human species in quality. And it's the only species that can do that, can respond to that. And we have to promote that.